Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian, and I'm streaming to you live from beautiful Budapest. I hope everybody is having a good week, and in this class we are looking at IELTS reading section, especially the academic module here, and we're looking for effective skills to get those higher band scores, even a band 9. This is a members chat class. Of course, everybody is welcome to watch. We will have an all chat class in about 90 minutes with task 2 writing. If you'd like to become a member of our channel, just simply click the join button beside the subscribe button. If you don't see that, send me an email and I can give you further instructions. For questions about our products or about how to be a member of the channel, just send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com. While we wait for our members to join into the class, this lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS. Check us out there at aehelp.com. That's academicenglishhelp.com. For the general version of the exam, check us out at gieltshelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com. On both of these websites, we have loads and loads of materials for you to prepare for your exam, learn effective communication strategies that will be useful to you in university, college, and in society. Just a quick peek at these websites. This is the academic website here at aehelp.com. You can click that big red button to join, and you can use the code R4TYJ to get a 20% discount. For the general IELTS version of our web portal, you're looking for the green background. Again, click that big red button to join there, and you can use code R4TYJ. Hello, Tito. Nice to see you in class and on time. While we wait for a few more of your peers to jump in, we'll go over a couple more administrative matters. If you are looking for our apps, download Academic IELTS Help and General IELTS Help from your Google Play stores. So today, reading, and then task 2. That will be followed tomorrow by task 1 for members, and then finishing task 2 for everyone. On Saturday, we'll have a Q&A session for members. That's questions and answers about the IELTS exam. And then, of course, speaking part 3, which will be for everyone. Hi, Elena. Nice to see you in class. Students, if you like to work from paper books, physical books, you can buy those from Amazon. You can get 2 different books for the academic with 6 practice exams. AE Helps Academic IELTS, or search for GE Helps General IELTS for the general exam books. Again, that's from Amazon. All right, let's get into it. Here is our topic for today. Now, this is a passage 3, so you can see reading passage 3. And technically, in the IELTS exam, because it's a progressive exam, the passages do get more and more difficult. Now, that isn't always true for every student, but overall, passage 3 is usually the most difficult, and passage 1 is usually the easiest of the 3 passages. Yeah. Tito, definitely you can send your voice recording to my email for a score estimate. Absolutely. Please do that. Make sure, Tito, to send that in MP3 format. Okay. All right, so students, this is a reading passage 3. You have a little bit of a picture here to help you figure this out. And then your first step always is read the title of the passage. So read with me, students. Causes of the American Economic Crisis. Okay, so looking at the picture and reading the title, we want to do a little bit of memory search. So look around inside your head and try to collect some information on this topic. Preeti, Tito, Elena, what do you think is going on here? So when you look at this picture, And when you read the title, Causes of the American Economic Crisis, what comes to mind? So just brainstorm. Okay? Preeti, that's good. 6 is not a bad start at all. That means you're a good user of the English language. What's your goal, Preeti? 7? More? All right, so let's stay on mark, stay on point. Again, tell me what you think of when you read this title and you look at this picture. Okay? So always take a moment to do this. You can even take up to a couple of minutes to brainstorm when you're looking at a passage. Okay, so step 1 for reading is read the title. Of course, look at the picture if there is one, and brainstorm as much as you can to collect information from your past knowledge. So here we have the title, Causes of the American Economic Crisis. Okay, so when you think about this and you look at the picture does help you here, students. What comes to mind? Okay, so Tito says something about the stock exchange. Yeah, the economy and the stock market are closely connected, right? The stock market is a reflection, Tito, of the economic state. So if the stock market is crashing, if it's going down, then obviously the economy is suffering. So stock exchange, yes. Preeti 7, you're not far off. Keep studying, okay? All right, so Tito says something about the stock market. Right? Tito, maybe take it one step further. Stock market crash, right? So include the word crash. Elena says demonetization. Can you explain that a little bit more for us, Elena? What you mean by demonetization? So monetary meaning money, of course. But what does that actually mean in this case, demonetization? So what are you saying? Give me a little bit more information. Yvonne says currencies changing. Okay. So students, don't just throw out catchphrases like changing currencies and demonetization, but take an extra step to get a more detailed response. So Abhishek, you're saying demand and supply, but again, you want to maybe say a little bit more, like too much supply, not enough demand. Okay, so say at least this much, Abhishek, too much supply, not enough demand. That leads to a crisis. Students, we're not just talking about the economy. So the title of the passage is not simply the American economy, but the title of the passage is Causes of the American Economic Crisis. So another way you can think about this is what I would do if I were to read this title, is what I would think about the question. What caused the American economic crisis in 2012? That was the specific year that happened, or sorry, 2008, I believe. But anyway, it was around that time. So this would be the question that would come to my mind, is what caused the American economic crisis in 2008? Okay, Pavan says not paying loans. That's a nice thought there. Okay, so not paying back loans. What kind of loans? Anybody know what kind of loans were not paid back during the 2000s that led to the American economic crisis? And of course, you know, it looks like, oh, we're talking about the US and America, and I don't know much about it, but that economic crisis was felt in all parts of the world. In fact, we're still feeling it in many parts of the world today. So we're not just talking about America, we're talking about a global economic crisis, which started with the American economic system, right? So Abhishek says home loans, and home loans, Ivan and Abhishek, you're right, they're called mortgages, okay? So not paying back loans, specifically on home loans, which are known as mortgages, right? Okay, so now you have a good thought. Stay with it, okay, students? So when you're predicting from the title of the passage and you start to get a good, clear idea, like not paying back loans, specifically home loans, then take it one step further and ask yourself, why not? So why didn't people pay these back? And why did they get these loans? So try to answer those questions for me, right? So why wouldn't a person pay back the loan on their homes? And why would they get a loan in the first place? Okay, so think about those questions. What do you think? So what do you think happened in the US? Was it simply people just didn't want to pay back the loans? Or was it another reason? And then how did they even get these loans? Okay, so Elena says maybe they lost their jobs, right? So it's possible. Losing their jobs is unemployment, right? So lost jobs, unemployment. Okay, it's possible. Tito says too many expenses. Maybe, Tito, what you mean here is the loans were too expensive. And we're spending a bit of time on this, but you'll notice that there is a reason for it. So when you have a challenging topic like causes of the American economic crisis, this step to predict and think about the information is even more important. If you just jump into a topic like this, it might be very difficult to understand, okay? So Pavan says the interest rates were really high, the tax system's bad, there was a low income threshold. Yeah, Pavan, so those are some good ideas, right? The loans were too expensive, taxes became too high, right? So all of those are good ideas. Okay, so now we're on the right path. What do I do next? So I looked at the picture, I read the title, I thought about it critically. Now I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable. Now this reading passage doesn't seem so scary anymore. I'm not freaking out as maybe when I first looked at it. So now what do I do? Now what do I do? Do I just jump right in and start reading, or should I do something else first? What do you think? Again, this is pure strategy. Abhishek says check the questions, and you're right, Abhishek. Let's check the questions. So here we go. Okay, first set of questions. Yes, no, not given. All right, we just released a video on strategy for this type of question, an HD video on the channel. Of course, in the video, we explain what I'm telling you right now. You never read these questions because they can be confusing, right? They contain false, not given information, so I just skip these. Okay, next set of questions. There's 3 of them. It's a complete each sentence with the correct ending. So it's a sentence completion type question. Now here, I don't want to read the possible choices because again, I don't know which ones are true, which ones are not given. So I only read the question parts here. So let's read these together. Banks have a responsibility to. each bank is responsible for. A recession is started when? Okay, so I'm gathering more knowledge about the passage. I know that here now there's going to be some information about banks, banks' responsibility, some information about the recession and how that works. Okay, good. So actively paying attention to processing this information. Next set of questions, questions 34 to 39, the American government's role. Okay, so something about banks and now something about the government. All right, so I'm keeping those two elements in my mind, right? Banks, government. Okay. So this I can read. This type of question can be very helpful because it's taken from the passage and it's paraphrased. What that means is the author writes down this summary in a different way using different words than in the passage. And of course, the more ways that we can understand the same piece of information, the better chance that we will understand it well. So let's read this carefully and hopefully we get some more insight. So read with me, okay? And again, students, this is reading, so make sure to read with me, okay? Let's read together. Here we go. It is the American government which is arguably most responsible for the economic crisis. In order to, properly, people must be sheltered from possible problems created by. Regulation is required in any society in order to coerce people into acting for the benefit of. Government is in place to serve its citizens, and in this case, it has failed. Apologists will say that the recession is just on the road of American supremacy, while others say that such bumps on the road are of serious problems. Regulation is the solution to the problem, but the American of independence and small government will be very difficult to crack. Okay. So again, I don't worry about these words. They're not going to help me to read those. And I will read question 40. Question 40 is multiple choice. So A, B, C, D, only one is correct. So I don't worry about reading this, just the question. Which of the following phrases best describes the main aim of reading passage 3? All right. So here I want to point out, students, that notice that from all of the information in the question part, before the passage, I'm reading this sentence here. I'm reading this summary here. And I'm reading these three choices here. The reason for that is I'm really only reading about 40% of the text. So that saves me time, okay? It saves me time to not read confusing and false information. Is that clear, members? So sometimes students think that it's wasting time or it takes too much time to read, but not if you're only paying attention to the correct information in the questions. Does that make sense? So then you're actually being more efficient, and efficiency is always value when it comes to time. Okay, so I'm going to make a note for you on this. So note, if you are reading question elements before the passage, that will help you to understand the passage, you are likely reading about 50% or less of the questions. Okay? This does not waste time, but rather saves time. It's much worse if you're reading all of that false information and then quickly trying to skim or scan the text for your answers. That's a really inefficient method. Okay? Meanwhile, I see that Saminder Kaur has jumped back into our chat here, and Saminder says, "Hi, sir. I scored band 7 in my IELTS, listening 8.5, reading 7, speaking 7, writing 6. I ran out of time to write my summary for task 2. Thank you for your help." Saminder, congratulations. Band 7 means that you are a good user of the English language. It takes not only English skills, Saminder, for that, but also good communication skills. So hats off to you. Congratulations. Saminder, please send me an email. I'd love to get your testimonial and add it to our other success stories. So good job, Saminder. All right. Tito says, yes, that makes sense. Good. All right. I see Preeti, Elena, Roshni also have said that that makes sense. Good. So now we have some clarity. So we know, okay, causes of the American economic crisis from our predictions, something about house loans. And from the questions, we know it had something to do with banks and with government. Okay. Awesome, Saminder. I'll wait for that email. Okay. All right. So now we start to read. And yes, students, especially those students who are academic IELTS students and looking to go to university or college, you have to be able to read the passage in about 10 minutes. So just skimming and scanning, even if you get super, super, super lucky and somehow you pass the IELTS with just skimming and scanning, you're not going to pass your courses in college or university with just skimming and scanning. So, and you have to read about 150 pages every week in college or university in Canada, US. Okay, so keep that in mind. And it's 150 pages of textbook, right? Okay, so let's read together. Here we go. When discussing the causes of the late 2000s American subprime mortgage crisis, it is easy to lay all the blame on the banks, but it is incorrect to claim innocent the individual homebuyers involved as well as the American government as a whole. There are many instances in the years leading up to the crisis where moral obligations failed to be met. For the homebuyers, it is a case of ignoring a scenario which was, upon deeper inspection, too good to be true. For the bankers, it was falling prey to their own laissez-faire loaning policies, lending without giving much interest to the mandates required of the borrower. For the government, it was instituting such a laissez-faire system in the first place, free of regulatory checks and balances. Okay, awesome. So lots of new words. Subprime mortgage, what does that mean? Doesn't matter. Home buyer, okay, something to do with home and buying. I can understand that. What is this introductory paragraph about? So what do you get from this? Members, what do you understand? And you don't have to understand all of this. You don't have to understand all of the words. You can get a band 7, no problem. I bet you Saminder will agree. You can get a band 7 without understanding every single word. You just have to get the main ideas, right? So what are the main ideas? What's the main idea that you can take from this introduction? Okay, and I mean that you have to understand. So Tito says, well, I got the idea that it's had something to do with the fault of the banks. So when you're practicing active reading, okay, so active reading, especially at home, after you finish a paragraph, ask yourself, what is it about? Then figure out the main information. If you can't, that's when you have to stop and start using a dictionary. Okay? So for example, here with paragraph 1, the main information has something to do with fault of the banks. Okay, sure. And I'm sure that will be expressed more. Yeah, Tito, so it's fault of the banks. Is it the fault of anybody else? So this introductory paragraph kind of lays out whose fault the American economic crisis is. One of the entities it lays out is the banks. It says, so the banks were lending money carelessly, right? Fault of banks, lending money carelessly. All right. So notice how much we can simplify this. Okay, anybody else's fault other than the bank? Who else's fault? It's quite clear. So if I hop back here, it says, it is easy to lay the blame on the banks, but it's incorrect to claim innocent the individual. Incorrect to claim innocent the individual. So it's also the fault of the home buyers. That's right, Roshni. Very good. So fault of the home buyers specifically. Why? Right? Because of borrowing money carelessly. Right? Yeah, Elena says people are picking up loans and then they fail to return it. So Elena, what you're saying is exactly what I'm saying. The home buyers are borrowing money carelessly. Anybody else's fault? Well, again, so you should be able to get this much. Okay, and actually the introductory paragraph repeats this information a couple of times, right? So it says, as well as the American government as a whole, right? And then it says later, for the government, it was instituting such a laissez-faire system in the first place, free of regulatory checks and balances, right? So banks, individuals, and the government, right? Why was the government at fault, Tito? So you're right, Tito, to say the government. Why was the government at fault? Because they turned a blind eye, right? So Tito says they were failing to check the balance of the situation, and you're right. So they were ignoring the situation between the banks and the borrowers, right? So the idiomatic expression here is turn a blind eye. So if you have a blind eye, it's like I'm looking at you, but my eye is closed, so I don't really see anything. Okay, that's the idiom in English, turn a blind eye. So they turned a blind eye. Okay, now, here's a really important tip to help you with your comprehension and your score. Okay, be extra careful when you read the introductory paragraph, as this will also give you an idea of the structure and content of the information. Information. Okay. What do I mean by that? I mean, pay attention to the thesis statement. Okay. Pay attention to the thesis statement. Okay. So watch what I mean by this. So this is the introductory paragraph here. And it says, from here, notice this interesting series of sentences. For the home buyers, it is a case of ignoring a scenario which was, upon deeper inspection, too good to be true, period. For the bankers, it was falling prey to their own laissez-faire loaning policies, lending without giving much interest to the mandates required of the borrower. For the government, it was instituting such a laissez-faire system in the first place, free of regulatory checks and balances. So here you have 1, 2, 3. Did everybody catch that when we read the introductory paragraph? Did you notice this order of information? The nouns, the subject nouns. So home buyers, bankers, government. So now my question is this. What will we read next? So what do you think will come in this first body paragraph? And then after the first body paragraph, what do you think will come in the next body paragraph? What do you think will come in the third body paragraph? Yeah, you guessed it. It's going to be the same order of information. So the introduction introduces these points, and then the body paragraphs will elaborate or give more information on these points. So the body paragraph 1 will most likely be about home buyers and why they are causing the crisis. Then there will be a paragraph about bankers, why they're causing the crisis, and finally about the government and why they're causing the crisis. Okay? This is exactly what you need to do in your task 2 essay with your introduction body paragraphs, just shorter, of course. Does that make sense? Members, that's a really important point. Okay? That can really help you to understand the passage and organize your ideas. Okay? So pay attention to the thesis statement. This will give you the outline of the passage. Okay? So does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, thank you, Elena. Thank you, Preeti. So let's keep going. Here we go. We're going to read nice and fluently, reflect verbally, and then we're going to get to the questions. Here we go. So read with me, students. Read with me. Okay? If a person falls prey to an email scam, the blame is deservedly placed on the hapless person. Society feels pity for them, but nobody feels the government should reimburse the individual for their lack of caution. The person in this scenario has affected no one but themselves. If a person falls prey to a too good to be true subprime mortgage and ends up bankrupt, he or she is not just hurting themselves, they are also hurting society because that debt inevitably rests with the populace. Thus, while a person has no social responsibility to act a certain way in the case of an email scam, a person does have a social obligation when it comes to actions that can hurt society, such as taking on a subprime mortgage. The counter-argument here is that people perceive banks as possessing a certain level of trustworthiness, and that it is unreasonable to expect people to have their too good to be true radar active when dealing with banks. Nevertheless, people do have an ethical obligation to be aware of the pitfalls, and being told it's okay by trustworthy institutions is simply not a sufficient excuse. What is this paragraph about? What are we talking about here? Let's see what you come up with. What do you think? So we're obviously talking about the home buyer. And what are we saying about the home buyer? What should the home buyer do and what shouldn't they do according to this paragraph? Again, I know there's a lot of challenging words and some interesting sentences. You don't have to understand it all. You just have to understand the main idea. And what is that? What is the author's main idea that they're trying to tell you here? So Roshni says persons are only responsible for their faults, but, okay, keep going, Roshni. Tito, very good. So Tito says people have a responsibility towards society when getting a loan for a house. Yeah, exactly, Tito. So, Tito, always finish your sentences because you're on the right track. You just have to finish the sentence. So, people are responsible towards society when getting a mortgage, when getting a home loan, right? Very good, Elena. So Elena says when they fail to return a loan, it affects all of society, especially a home loan, because it's a massive amount of money usually. Okay, very good. All right, that's exactly what this paragraph is saying. It's saying that individuals cannot just blame the banks, they should also blame themselves. If they know that they're getting a loan they can't pay back, they shouldn't get that loan, right? So don't borrow money that you can't pay back, especially when it's lots of money and it hurts society, like home loans. Okay? Very good, Preeti. Okay, let's keep going. That's all you really need to understand from that paragraph. Here we go. Next paragraph. Banks. Hey, look at that. Just like we thought from the thesis statement. Banks have a responsibility to protect their customers and to look out for the general economic health of not just their company, but of the entire industry. The American banks failed in these considerations in each of these regards. First, they offered mortgages to millions of ill-qualified buyers who were very clearly not going to be able to fulfill the requirements of the mortgage to make the loans viable. Individual lenders acted selfishly, exploiting very relaxed lending policies to benefit their own finances. Second, banks failed to look after the health of their own companies. This is not a failure of individual bankers, but a failure of those in management positions. Many U.S. companies that need a multi-billion-dollar bailout are an unmitigated disaster. Although this failure falls more in line with the email scam, that is to say, a failure which is not a social failure but a business failure, the social failure lies in the bank's obligation to the entire industry and the economy as a whole. Each bank is responsible for a small piece of the economic pie. If one bank fails, it appears as a blip on the radar. However, with each individual failure, the threshold for failure for the remaining companies is lowered. It is in this sense that the companies have a moral obligation to do good business, because if they do not, they raise the chances of bankruptcy for each of their competitors and the economy as a whole. Eventually, the threshold of failure is so low that almost all lending has to cease and a recession is ignited. Okay, here I keep in mind that somewhere in the questions I also saw the word recession. All right, so in this case we're talking about the banks and the banks being at fault. How are the banks at fault? So what, according to this author, what should banks do and what do banks have to be careful about? Again, lots of tough words, lots of new vocabulary. You don't have to understand it all. You just have to understand the main ideas and you can get a band 657, no problem. Okay. So, Preeti says the duties of the banks and the obligation of the banks. And what is that, Preeti? Saminder says banks are responsible for the economic failure of the country. How, Saminder? Tito says banks didn't have much financial data of people. Yes, I see where you're going, Tito. That's a little bit of a detail, but banks were lending money to people without money. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that was in there. So banks have a responsibility to society. Who else do banks have a responsibility for? So who else? Yeah, so Elena says banks are giving loans to lenders without judging their ability to pay back those loans. Okay. And in several places here, students, so again, don't overthink it. So here, each bank is responsible for a small piece of the economic pie. If one bank fails, it appears as a blip. However, with each individual failure, the threshold of failure for the remaining companies is lowered. So banks have a responsibility for each other, right? So banks are not just responsible for society, individuals, but for each other, for other banks, because they're connected, right? Yeah, Tito, very good. There's a mistake at the management level of the banks. Okay. All right. So far, so good. Let's keep going. Of course, it's not a guess. We can infer that the next paragraph will have to do with the government, right? Something about the government. So again, students, I'm not just reading for you, okay? I'm confident I can read this, but I'm reading with you. So make sure to read together with me, okay? In this investigation of blame placing, arguably the body who holds the most responsibility is the American government. The truth is that if people are not protected from themselves by the government, society cannot function well. The wholly free market is akin to an economic version of Hobbes' state of nature, people acting like tigers and bears trying to get at each other's money. Society does not work optimally when it pays overwhelming dividends for people to act selfishly. It takes regulation in economic policy to force people into acting in society's best interest. One of the duties of a government is to protect its citizens from each other. And in this case, the American government has failed catastrophically. Defenders of the free market will claim that this recession is simply a temporary bump in the road for what is arguably the greatest economic power in world history. They will claim that the free market is in the best interest of everyone, despite its rather unsightly undercarriage. In response, it can be argued that the bumps in the road are symptomatic of a system in need of healing by means of regulation. Unfortunately, American culture is such that any regulation is seen as government interference in private affairs, and such intervention conflicts with American ideals. Economics is not the only arena where this belief system is played out. Americans continue to allow their poorest citizens to live without proper health care, and they put the burden of the cost of higher education directly on students. Many European countries fully subsidize higher education. Until this distaste for government intervention is cast aside, events like the subprime mortgage crisis will continue to occur. Whether they are merely bumps on the economic road or signs of forthcoming systemic collapse, in both cases the government has failed to fulfill their role to save citizens from themselves. In regard to subprime mortgages, regulation of banking is like an insurance policy for the economy. It may lower profits, insurance policies cost money, but it smooths out the bumps in the road. As long as the American government continues to turn a blind eye to these insurance policies, they will continue to put the social well-being of citizens at risk. Whew, long paragraph, lots of information. But you have to read it, okay? Even if you're thinking, I don't know what's going on here, I'm having trouble following, it's okay, you have to read it and you have to get the main idea. The main idea here is that governments are responsible to regulate or control people, control the banks. Because if they don't, then people behave like tigers and bears, trying to claw and bite and get at each other's money. The American government failed in this case because they weren't regulating. They were letting the tigers and bears get at each other's money, and at the end of the day, it all collapsed. Okay, so the government failed because they didn't do their job to control and regulate these entities. Right? That's all you really need to get. Okay, let's look at some questions. Let's look at these yes, no, not given questions. We talked a lot about the strategy needed for these questions. Again, there's a new video, an HD video on the channel about the yes, no, not given questions. Students, members, how many of you saw that new yes, no, not given strategy video? Pavan, Tito, Saminder, Helena, Preeti? Have you seen it? Have you seen that new yes, no, not given strategies, what to pay attention to, how to do these? That new video, it's got kind of like a green thumbnail with a rabbit being pulled out of the hat. Abhishek says, me, I've seen it. Yeah, definitely check it out. It will help a lot. I appreciate your honesty, Tito. No. Preeti says, yep. Roshni says, I've seen it. Cool. So yeah, check that out. So here, we're using the if this then that logic, right? So those that fall for common scams deserve to be compensated by society. Okay, so is it important to know if people should be compensated? Compensated means they get their money back or something else by society. So is this important to know for this question, or sorry, for this topic? It's about the individual. So is it important to know whether or not society should repay people who accidentally fall for some kind of a scam? Yeah, Abhishek says, yes, it is. Yes, because it's about the individual, right? So this is about the individual. And yes, it's important. So I know it's important. Therefore, I know that it's given. Okay, and is it true? So is it true that people should be compensated? So society should give them help if they fall for a scam? Should the community or the government be like, oh, I'm so sorry that you lost some of your money because you didn't realize that was a scam. Here's some money for you back. Should governments and society compensate people? No, absolutely not. So remember, students, this is yes, no, not given. Abhishek, don't say false. You'll get it wrong. So you're right. It's not true. So it's no. Therefore, the answer is no. It comes from the second body paragraph. Virashiti, welcome to our group of members. Thank you for joining. Send me an email and I'll hook you up with those exclusive videos. Yeah, so the answer is no. It's the email scam, right? It's the email scam. The email scam, it says, well, if people fall to an email scam, nobody gives them their money back, right? Okay, number 28. Many homebuyers are too young and irresponsible. Is this question important? So again, it's about the homebuyer, so it's the individual. Is it important to know if they're young or old or middle-aged, and that's why they're not responsible? So is that important to know? Rikanth, not your email, send me an email. So send an email to me, adrian@aehelp.com. Yeah, so a lot of you are saying, no, that's not important. It's not, we don't need to know the age of the home buyer. It doesn't matter, so it's not given. So NG, not given. You don't even need the slash. NG, not given. Absolutely. Yeah, we don't need the age. Okay. All right, now number 29. Society trusts the banking system. Is it important to know whether people trust the banks or not for this topic of causes of the economic crisis? Okay, is that important to know whether or not people trust the banking system? Yes, Tito, Roshni, absolutely. Yes, it's important. So important, it's given. So important, so given. And is it true society trusts the banking system? Is that true? It's definitely important, right? That society trusts the banking system for this topic. Rodrigo. Um, is it true? Does society trust the banking system? Just think about yourself. When you go to the bank and you give them money, is it because you trust them and you know the money will be there? Of course, right? Otherwise, you'd be putting your money into your pillow, okay? Like great grandma used to do. Pillow. Yeah. So it's true. Again, remember, yes, no, not given. Make sure you answer yes. Yeah. It's important. It's given. It's true. So the answer is yes. All right. That's the strategy that you want to follow here. Number 30, home buyers have an ethical obligation to beware of trustworthy institutions. Is it important to know whether or not home buyers should be careful about trustworthy banks? Is that important, this last one, for an economic crisis? So if I want to borrow money, is it my responsibility to think about, maybe I shouldn't borrow from this bank, it doesn't look correct? Yeah, absolutely it is. Tito says, yes, it is. Absolutely, I agree it is for this topic. Okay, so it's important. So it's given, right? Is it true? Is it true that people who are buying houses should be careful about trustworthy institutions like banks or lending institutions? So should we be careful? Or should we be like, oh, whatever, hey, that guy said, give me $1 million. And I said, okay, no problem, I'll borrow. Yeah, absolutely, we should be careful. So, yes. Okay, so again, the logic for yes, no, not given is think about whether or not it's important. That's your first step. If it's important, it's given. Okay, 99% that if it's important for that topic, that passage is going to be given. The only time it's not given is when it's not important. Like many home buyers are too young and irresponsible. We don't know that, especially these days. A lot of people don't buy their home until they're well into their 40s or maybe even 50s. It takes a lot of money, right? So we don't know that. That's not important. But these other ones, they're definitely important. So we can tell that this is given, not given, given, given. Now, when we know that this, and this are given, all we have to do is figure out if it's true or not. Okay? IELTS doesn't lie. So if it's true, it's going to be true there also. All right? So it is logical, Tito. You're absolutely right. So if you figured out that it's given, logic will help you a lot. All right, students. So that's how we do these yes, no, not given. The most important point for today's lesson is using the title and using the picture to effectively predict the content of the passage. That will help you a lot. Also, make sure that you pay attention to the right parts of the questions, and when you're at home and practicing, make sure to actively read. That means when you finish a paragraph, identify the main idea, main points of that paragraph. You don't have to understand every word, but the main points, absolutely. All right, students, so the remaining questions, I'll leave those to you. Here is the completing the sentence endings. Banks have a responsibility too. Each bank is responsible for. Here are the choices. Okay. Again, this video is recorded, so you will see the video on the channel. You can look at these questions and answer them. And if you send me an email, I will gladly send you the answer key so you can see how you did. Okay. Now, for everyone, we have a class coming up in about 35 minutes, which will be task 2 writing. Kind of an interesting and hot topic for the state of affairs in the world today, of course. So make sure you tune in 30 minutes to the task 2 essay topic. It should be interesting for everyone. And again, check out aehelp.com for academic IELTS. Use the coupon code R4TYJ to get that 20% off. And gieltshelp.com, you can use the same code there for the general IELTS. Okay. All right. Preeti, sorry, I don't have time for that. It's in your premium package, so you'll have to check that out there. Okay. Madhu, yes, you can pick up points if you use a very accurate synonym for the question. However, I do suggest, Madhu, that you try to use the same word that's in the passage. But if you have a perfect synonym, the IELTS will accept that, okay, as long as it makes sense in context. All right. You're very welcome, Abhishek. Tito, download the app, Academic IELTS Help and General IELTS Help. Every day we send out new words for you to learn, okay? Also, there's words in your My Student page in the vocabulary blog, Tito, so check that out. Shrikanth and our other new member, send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com so I can hook you up with your perks, okay? Those are also in your account when you check on YouTube on the channel. You'll see the email there, okay? So send the emails there. I saw 2 new members coming into the class today. That's great. Welcome. So send your emails and I'll hook you up with the perks, okay? Tito, 3 to 5 new words each day. 3 to 5 new words, okay? All right, everyone. That's it for this class. 30 minutes from now, one more class, task 2 essay writing. Hopefully see you there. Bye.